Afternoon. Certainly appreciate Ian and the ACT group inviting me to come speak today. I think they probably put me in this time slot to kind of ease you guys back into the afternoon. So this morning you got to listen to people who went to University of Chicago, MIT, Purdue with an engineering degree, and now you're going to get a 5-year communications major from Illinois State University. So this should be dumbed down a little bit. You can ease into it, but certainly appreciate it, right? I think when I first started talking to Ian and Ann and some of the folks about potentially talking here, and I thought maybe I was coming up to kind of be the Chris Christie of Sunday mornings, right? And talk about our view and what we're seeing in decarbonization and the transition to zero emission vehicles. But I think Brent this morning really is kind of seeing some of the same things we are. So I'm really going to kind of come from the perspective of not so much killing you with graphs and things of that nature, but this is what we've been seeing, and this is what our customers are telling us, and this is what we're thinking about as an organization. So we're 100% understand that there's a big change happening, and we're trying to figure out what our place is in that world, what our value proposition is going to be to our customers, and how we can take full advantage of it. But we really think that we're really at the beginning of something that's going to take a long time to develop. So go in a little bit and tell you a little bit more about why I went to Illinois State University. This is a picture circa 1980. I can't believe how big my forehead was back then. But it certainly was, and I really kind of stole this from Tom over at Cummins down the street. If you've ever seen him give a presentation, likes to talk about who he is and where he came from and how he kind of sees the world and why he looks at things the way he does. And for me, certainly I grew up in Wheaton, Illinois, had a great upbringing. The man in the middle there is Captain John Vicha. He was my father, is my father from Minot, North Dakota. Actually the son of one of the first ice road truckers. My grandfather used to haul feed from Minot north through Winnipeg and up north into Canada. And then he went through, and after high school, they didn't have a ton of money. He enlisted in the Marine Corps and went over to Vietnam, spent time there and came back and turned that into an education where he has a master's degree and ended up as a superintendent of schools in the Chicago area. My mother, Pat, was a stay-at-home mom. She stayed with us until we got old enough to go to school and then became the business director of a school district in Wheaton, Illinois. My brother, Kurt, 2 years younger than me, has a PhD, went to Penn State for that. Now runs the Department of Immigration office in Miami. Not an easy job, as you can probably imagine. Working for the government as well. And my sister, Jen, is a teacher with master's degree as well, highly educated, and history teacher and a coach of a super successful girls cross-country team in Naperville, Illinois. As a matter of fact, she's finished second in the national championships 3 times with her team. But I share that with you a little bit because in our house, the debate was certainly something that was celebrated. Competing and debating over dinner, and certainly had 4 folks in there that were really saw the world one way, and I saw it a little bit differently. And so we learned there and kind of became the contrarian of the group here. And I think maybe in some cases we might have a little contrarian view as to a lot of the stuff that I hear out there, but I'm starting to hear more people like Brent looking at the world and seeing some of the things that we see. So a little bit maybe on National Lease for those of you that don't know who we are. We are North America's largest full-service truck leasing organization, at least the way we see it by size. Certainly there's a lot of other different ways to measure it, but we compete every day with the Riders of the world, the Penskes of the world, Ideal Lease, folks like that. We were founded in 1944. Again, have over 1,000 locations today in the United States and Canada, operating over 85,000 trucks and tractors. And our world is really the Class 6 through 8 market. We've got over 45,000 Class 8 trucks on the road today, and then the rest, a majority of those being Class 6 and 7. Although as we start looking at this world of alternative power, I'll call it, we see that there's a great opportunity for truck leasing and really bullish on what that's going to be. But we're trying to figure out what the timing of that is and what our value prop is going to be. Our typical customer, I think, is important too, versus some of the other folks maybe in the room. Our customer is somebody that's a private fleet. Transportation's a necessary evil. It's not what they do. They're not in the transportation business, but they're delivering newspapers, they're delivering bread, they're delivering beverages, to their customers, and they really want the most cost-effective way to finance their truck and keep their truck on the road. They want to be able to use their asset the most cost-competitive way possible. So we really, as a group, started looking at this really hard. Obviously, we were talking about it years before that, but in 2020, a lot of folks in the room may be familiar with Ken Davis, former president over at Eaton, sits on our board of directors, and he's the chairman of our strategic committee. And we really said at that time, we really got to figure this thing out and start spending the time trying to figure out what our members' opportunity is and what we need to do to be able to service our customers. Again, find what our competitive advantage is going to be in this space, and start doing it now. So the first thing we did was really, Ken and I hit the road, and we hit the road for a couple of years, seeing a lot of folks that are in the room today and other folks. And we started with our partners, and we're agnostic as a company. We buy trucks from everybody. We buy the trucks that our customers want to utilize, and we buy the trucks that our members want to take care of. So about 70% of our fleet mix today is made up of Volvo, of Daimler, Freightliner, and of international trucks. And we went out to go see them to see, what are you guys seeing, to walk through what their strategic plan was, and to see what, to hear what they thought and see what they were building. We also went out to a lot of the startups, right? I think the folks at Lion today talked about a big advantage that they have, and I think in that case they really do, right? They've raised a lot of capital. They're spending a lot of time researching and developing the best mousetrap that they can in the battery electric vehicle. And we spent time at Exos. We have a partnership with Exos that we just kicked off about a year and a half ago. We've talked with the folks at Lion Electric, folks at Lone Star, who are really developing a yard spotter that's electric that we think makes a lot of sense. And we also went out and talked to a lot of folks across the street here at Cummins, at Eaton, at Dana, the powertrain people. And I even throw Shell in here too, because didn't even mean to, but we went down, we have a strong strategic partnership with Shell. And about a year and a half ago, I went down to Houston for a day of meetings, right? And walk into the lobby there. And the first thing that you see that hits you in the face in the lobby isn't anything to do with an oil well. They've got an electric charging station there. And they want to talk to you about what they're doing to transition to being able to be a service provider. Because if you think about it, right, especially from the OEMs at the top here and down to the guys Shell at the bottom, they could look at it two different ways. They could try and hang on to exactly what they have. They could try and identify that there's a big change happening, and are they going to survive and thrive and move into it? And these guys got a big challenge in spending, literally billions of dollars researching and time, both what the future may be, as well as still supporting what they have today. The other advantage they have, right, they're great at manufacturing, and they've got a built-in network to take care of it as well, too. So a lot of change going on there. We also figured out pretty early we had to really start talking to utilities, because one of the big pieces is going to be, right, how are you going to get it? How fast are you going to get it? What's it going to cost? In the future, should battery electric win, right? We think that, we're going to be financing trucks. We're going to still be maintaining trucks, although, very differently. But we're going to also have to work with our members and our customers as a partners to coming up with a strategic plan as to how are they going to charge these things. The days of maybe pulling into a national lease facility and fueling it up and then driving it home, you can't do that right now. You're going to have land. I think somebody brought up the BP partnership there too. I think that might be one of the strategic things that they're looking at doing, right? Is this going to have to be land? We already have a problem with parking trucks that are over the road overnight, and it could be a real estate deal as much as, as where they're going to be charging these things. But there's a lot of stuff that has to go on. We tried to put in 5 charging stations in a Riverside, California facility a couple of years ago, right? Should be as easy and should be as open of an area to get that done. And utility was looking for us to also participate with $3 million to increase the substation, and maybe they could get it done within 3 years. I remember, and I'll talk about this a little bit too, I walked down to the end of the location and looked at all the other people in Riverside and all these other trucks that could potentially be battery electric, right? And if we've got to deal with this, who else is dealing, what are all these guys going to do as well? So I think you need to really start having, and we've started having these conversations, already with the folks, especially at Exelon, which is in Chicago, right by myself, and Duke Energy, as to trying to figure out what these guys are seeing and what's really going to happen. And we also partnered with the folks at ACT. Ken Davis and a lot of our folks on our board have worked closely with these guys. Jim Meal has spoken at National Lease events since I've been there. I don't mean to date you, Jim, but certainly really helped give us and kind of benchmark exactly what we were thinking and what we were seeing with what they're doing with talking to everybody else, including you guys here in the room. And we're really growing that partnership with them because we're getting a lot of value out of it. And not a shameless plug here or anything, but really appreciate the work that the folks here at ACT do it, because they're playing a big part in us validating what we're seeing and how we're moving forward with this. So while we went through all this, of course, right, we also were talking to our customers. And up here is a list of a few of them, right? And the customers that are really asking us the questions about it, right, are publicly traded companies. I'm not, so I don't have that disclaimer that I had to give that other folks did today. But our customers that are, especially the ones that are really dealing directly with consumers, right? They're asking questions about this because they want to be green and they want to be cost effective. And so do we. We're always looking for a new opportunity and the new way to do it better and to be a good global corporate citizen as well. But I think, as Brent hit too, there's a lot of headwinds as you move into these things. So what we did want to do is start looking at, all right, what's this going to cost? And this is right here that's kind of blanked out a little bit, is a rate sheet that all of our sales folks use within our organization. It's not going to be any different than what the guys at Penske use, for instance, or anybody else in our industry. It's a pretty simple, at the end of the day, it's not rocket science. But when it comes to if you just take out what it costs to change our shops and to change the ability and having the technicians, on board to be able to take care of these things and train these things, there's a big piece of this that needs to be addressed. And that goes into the total net investment. What's our cap cost of buying this truck, right? For us, it's been about another 50% increase with the quotes that we've received as to what we're buying internal combustion trucks for today. And then there's this big one here, and a couple of the folks at Lion, at Exos, Daimler or whatever, they've heard us come into their office and say, this is the piece. So when we tell them, in our world, a battery electric vehicle costs 300% more to lease than an internal combustion engine, this is a big piece of it, because this is what we're looking at in the truck leasing industry. And I'll go back a little bit. Private fleets, right? National Private Truck Council does a really good job here supporting private fleets across the country. And they'll tell you today that about 50% of the private fleets, the Walgreens, people with their name on the side of the truck, not in transportation, those are leased trucks from people like us or Ryder or Penske. It was about 35% just about 10 years ago here. But that the big piece, one of the big reasons that people like that do it, right, is in the leasing business, if we were a manufacturing company, we manufacture used trucks. We buy new trucks, we run them and lease them for 5, 6, 7 years, and then we sell them as used vehicles. And getting this number right is imperative in our business. So you just take, for simple math, right, a $100,000 truck, we put a 25% residual on it. We say we're going to run that thing for 5 years with one of our customers. And so that customer is really just going to depreciate $75,000, not $100,000. But we're also banking on the fact that we can sell it through our network at 30, right, or 32. That's how a leasing company, really generates some money. And I'm not giving any secrets here away. The question is, what's that battery electric vehicle that we're buying today? What's that going to be worth? And we don't have any history to tell us. We're pretty good. We can tell you what an internal combustion engine is going to be. We can predict that pretty well. We've got the data. We've been following the market. We listen to Steve and we listen to other people tell us what's coming up down the road and can pretty much predict pretty well in a conservative manner what this truck that we're putting on the road today is going to be worth on the used truck market 5-6 years from now. But with the battery electric, we don't know, right? And I've even spoken to a couple folks that, hey, if you really want to start producing more of these things and selling them to us, take a residual position and at least get us close to even where we don't have to take on all that risk, or our customer doesn't have to take on that risk today. So I bring this up because I sat in front of one that I'll remain unnamed, and he really just said, hey, Dean, at lunch, why isn't anybody ordering any of these things from us? And that's really a big part of what it comes down to. And I have this here. It's not just a shameless plug for my Chicago White Sox. It's February. Hope springs eternal, right? I'm sure by about the end of April or March, I'll be ruining them again like I usually do. But it kind of seems to me, where I'm sitting is that we kind of went into this market here a little bit with the idea that, they've always said before, right, if you build it, they're going to come. But maybe in this world, it kind of went the other way around. I think a lot of folks looked at it and said, hey, they will come, then we're going to build it. And when I talk about that, what I'm talking about is the infrastructure. A lot of folks have spent billions of dollars, right? They can produce the trucks. We're running some of the trucks today out in California and West Texas, and we're just about to put in a couple of battery electric trucks in the market in the Northeast. And really started wondering, though, in some cases, right, if you watch all the news and if you see all the prognostications, there's a lot of momentum around that a big transition's happening. But I think it's a picture of John O'Leary from Daimler, who just came out publicly a couple weeks ago, right, and said that they were really slowing down production. They'd invested billions of dollars into transitioning their Portland plant from one that made internal combustion trucks to one that makes battery electric. But he says, the electrification interest is there, but it's constrained by a lot of infrastructure challenges. And that's what we're seeing too, and that these challenges are limiting to the deployment of more units. The question is, what are you going to do with these things? How long are they going to last, and how are you really going to, how are you going to keep these things charged? And it's not just saying today, because you could do it today, depending on what you want to. We had one vendor say, hey, I think your solution in Kansas City, Missouri is we're going to put on a generator that's diesel powered, and you can charge them through that. I think Brent spoke to that a little bit today. But when we try and look way down the road a little bit, we're also wondering, substations, and we've talked to the utilities about this, right? Where trucks are at, especially class 6 through 8 trucks, they're in industrial parks, right? They're in the same kind of area. In Chicago, they're in Elk Grove, and they're by O'Hare Airport, or they're on the southwest side of Chicago. Here's a picture of Indianapolis, right? And, south kind of over by the airport, and a couple of other cities, New York. And they all put all the trucks in one spot. So what does that mean? Well, we think it means that these trucks are all going to pull off the same substation, right? And how much money is going to have to be invested to get that substation up, and how much ground is going to have to be dug to get it to all these locations? And is there going to be a challenge of, hey, if you're first, I may be able to charge it today, but what's it going to cost me to charge it 3 years down the road when the other guys adapt? How much is even going to be available for it, to do it? Are we going to get to a point where, you don't have the ability to charge it 5 years after you had the ability to charge it if they don't keep up with the infrastructure? We also then have to ask ourselves a bunch of questions, right? 1,000 locations, family-run businesses throughout the U.S. and Canada. Our shops are going to need to change. That's going to take an incredible amount of time. Our techs need to either be trained in it, or they're going to have to be retrained. Our techs, again, are going to have to be like an OEM. We're going to have to be able to work on an internal combustion engine, work on a battery electric engine, and by the way, maybe even natural gas and things of that nature, and who knows about hydrogen fuel cells and things of that nature. We're not even sure yet which technology is actually going to win at the end. The only thing we think is that somebody is going to win, and then that's going to take a major capital investment. That's going to take a huge commitment. I kind of look at it in some ways, right, like you're like a surfer, and out there, and I see this big change that is happening, and we're 100% with it. We want to pick the right one and find what our opportunity is, right? But if you're out in California and you're down by San Diego and you watch the surfers who are way better at it than I could ever hope to be, but there's 3 different places, right, that guys usually try and hit it, or girls. And the first one is they go too deep, and the wave gets started a little bit early, but it's not big enough and it's not ready, so it just kind of rolls under them and they sit out there and try and paddle in a little bit. And then there's the other group that misses the timing of it, right? And they get on it a little bit too late, and the wave crashes on top of them and then puts them under. But it's that timing, it's that guy who hits it and knows exactly when to paddle and catch that thing right when it's starting to crest, who rides that piece in. And that's just kind of that's kind of how I have it pictured into my head as to what we're doing and what our customers are doing. And so going back to the residual then too, right, and the future of it, I can tell you these trucks do work. The ones that we're operating, they have to be spec'd, really to the customer's needs. It's a little bit different than an internal combustion engine where us or Ryder or maybe the Penske guys see this too, right? Can't necessarily use the same truck for multiple different types of customers, that are using it for different needs, which is what our rental fleet sees every day. But we're asking ourselves right now, how much faster is this thing going to charge in 2030, right? Moore's Law, technology changes exponentially. Is the truck today, and this goes into us trying to predict what residual values are, is the truck today even going to be viable in 2030? How much lighter is it going to be, right? And then how much farther is it going to go? Which is a big thing, right? I think, hey, if that Tesla truck works with Penske and goes Pepsi and goes 500 miles, that's a game changer. That that brings in that increases the ability and for where it could make sense. But there's a lot of questions that in our world, if you look at 2035, what California is talking about, right? That's really two more trucks. A truck that gets ordered today that hits the road today with National Lease is going to be on a 5 to 7 year term. That'll get replaced in 2030, and then after that, in California, they say we can't order another internal combustion engine. So we're trying to figure out. So we know it's coming. We're trying to figure out what the timing is, and this is kind of where we're at today. It's the only graph I'll show you, and it's not as detailed as some of the other things. But we certainly think it's really kind of hard to predict a little bit. But we're spending our time really trying to learn about it right now. And when we have that customer who's willing to go in with us and say, hey, we're going to do this together, we both want to learn it together, we're going to take those opportunities and put those trucks on the road. I put that curve right around 2027 because I think everybody in the room knows what's happening in 27. And that's when I think you really might start to see a transition start to occur, right? When the price of the internal combustion truck gets raised to a certain level, right? And if the electric comes down a little bit, then that conversation that goes on inside the boardrooms as to, what's the ROI, what's our return going to be on this, that starts to get a little bit closer. And then we see that time frame up to around 2036, 2037, really starting to adapt. And then the conversion around 2040, which I think is, in our world, is pretty much in line with maybe what ACT came up with on their solutions. I want to say, Steve, it was 33% or so on Class 8s and 40% on Class 7s by then, and certainly we think that could certainly be the case. But that it's going to be a long road. But you need to start preparing for it. Start preparing for it today. So, again, kind of what we're trying to do right now is figure out what that opportunity is for National Lease. Big part of it, right? And I think this is the big part with anybody who really understands it, who owns trucks or leases trucks, is you got to figure out what that residual is and make me feel comfortable. The customer wants to feel comfortable that at the end of the term, they're not going to owe any extra money, or they're not going to have a truck that has no value. So what's the real residual and cost of this truck going to be? When's the right time to start building that network and the infrastructure? For that, I really think you really need to spend, and we're going to be spending a lot of time working with the utilities on that. And what's the timing? Certainly we see a lot of numbers out there about money that's being appropriated to build this infrastructure, right? But I think at the beginning I told you I'm a kid from Illinois. I don't necessarily always trust the government or what they're going to do, right? I think the tollways in Illinois were supposed to go to the school system or whatever and then go away in 1980. That hasn't happened yet. So we're going to really be watching, when do we really have this opportunity to build these things, and when can the substation and the infrastructure actually handle what we're talking about doing it? Then we'll start working on our shop and our techs. And then building trust, because I think that's really kind of, at the end. Is this thing going to work? Is it going to work the way it's supposed to work? And am I going to be able to deliver my product the most cost-effective way possible and know that every day when I come to work I have an asset that I can use to deliver our newspapers, deliver our bread, deliver your pop, all those things that make a lot of sense as to types of delivery scenarios for battery electric. But at some point, somebody in these companies in this boardroom is making a call and saying, we're going to make the transition from one to the other. And at that point, you better be right? And which one's a safer bet today? So at the end of the day, I try not to be contrarian enough to say that, hey, we don't think this is coming and that we're hoping to keep everything the same, because that's not it at all. But we just want to make sure that we can help and be a part of it and find our opportunity in changing the world, making it a better place, but finding out exactly that where that wave is cresting between a technology that works, an infrastructure that supports it, and quite frankly, people who are ready to operate those things. So with that, I will. I think I got a couple minutes here. Be open to any questions or anything that you may look for, but certainly appreciate the time and the opportunity to come here and speak to you guys.
All right, what questions do we have for Dean here? We run those mics to you.
Afternoon nap time?
We need more caffeine, apparently.
Awesome.
I know somebody's awake and has a question. There's one right there.
Thank you. So you talked about the risk of residual values on the battery electric. How are you thinking about long-term the risk of residual values on your core business around 2030, right, when things start to transition a little bit?
Yeah.
How are you going to manage that?
Are you talking about the residual values we have right now on diesel trucks?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Quite frankly, we think there's going to be a time frame where those become, even more valuable. They're going to go out into the market, and we sell used trucks. For the most part, who do we sell them to? We sell them to owner operators. We sell them to smaller companies, family-run businesses, 1 to 3 that may not have the credit to purchase something. But we think that there's going to be a huge market for people who believe that it's, number one, it's going to be a truck that they can afford, a truck that they can buy used. And secondly, there's going to be a lot of folks that don't want to do the transition or don't have the ability to do it. And we, even to the point of think that at some point, right, maybe the diesel fuel market's really going to drop at the end, before this gets out, right? The people are going to have, there's a lot of oil wells and there's a lot of opportunity, and people are going to want to maximize what they can. So we think it's going to be a pretty strong, trucks today, truck that goes in service today is going to come out in 2028 to 2030, with us. And we think it'll probably be a pretty strong used truck market, barring economic and other things that could happen. But all else being equal, we think that there's going to be a period where used trucks are going to be, are going to have a little extra value because it's diesel while there's a conversion going on.